Hey guys, Pastor Ryan Hurt here at LVC. I'm so excited that you've tuned in to listen to this message. But before we begin, I would ask that if you've been blessed by LVC or these sermons, that you might consider giving back to us so that we can continue to put out these resources to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ, both here in Lingoville and the world abroad. You can give on this app or website. As happy as that we are that you have tuned in, we do ask that this does not take the place of being a part of the local church, and we encourage all folks to be a part of the local body. We're glad to provide this sermon for you, and I pray that this message helps you and you're growing in Jesus Christ. Blessings.
All right, we got a lot to cover, a little bit of time, so it's going to be like drinking from a fire hydrant this morning. All right, I'm going to talk as very quickly as I can. If you need to go, promise you're not going to hurt my feelings. But we got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. But that being said, I want to start this service out with a writing from the great King Solomon. It's found in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 14. King Solomon was the son of King David. He's at the end of his life. If you remember the story, he prayed for wisdom. God gave him wisdom. He's got an incredible amount of wisdom. In fact, a lot of our Bible was at the pen of King Solomon, the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, the Song of Solomon, and we'll do that again one day. But that all came from the pen of Solomon. And Ecclesiastes is an incredible book. If you're wanting to see what life is all about, or maybe you're trying to figure out life, Ecclesiastes is a good reminder. And I've said it before that we're here today, we're gone tomorrow. Man, we're just another generation that's coming and going. And Ecclesiastes just helps frame up this reality. The whole book of it really does. And so with that being said, the 7th chapter, 14th verse is what King Solomon would write, and we're going to base our whole sermon on this reality. And he says this, I'm reading from the NLT, it says, enjoy prosperity while you can. But when hard times strike, realize that they both come from God. Remember that nothing is certain in this life. As we all say, amen. King Solomon is pointing us to the reality that our lives are going to be marked by ups and downs and all arounds. There's going to be mountaintop moments in our story, but whether we're a believer or even an atheist here and we don't believe in God, the reality is bad days are coming. The phone call's coming. We live in a sin-filled world where it's going to be marked by the ebb and flow of good days and bad days. We love the good days. We don't always like the bad days, but this is a grim reality. And so today in our next big story, we're going to see just how true Ecclesiastes 7:14 is. But what we're going to see today is that God in His sovereignty, even in the crappiest of our days, all right, so in those moments when the phone call comes, in those moments when we feel like we've missed the mark, in those moments that we feel like we have turned our backs on the Lord, what we're going to see today is that God in His sovereignty is everywhere. He's on the mountaintops, He's in the valleys. He's in every decision that we make. He's in every conversation that we have. He's in every comment that comes out of our mouth. He's in every step that we take. We're going to see today He's in every word that is spoken, and He's even in the silence. He's even in those moments that we don't speak, maybe even when we should have spoke. We're going to see today God is there. Nothing ties His hands. We're going to see today that God is in every nanosecond. He's not up in the heavens trying to figure things out. He's everywhere. And we're going to see that through this amazing story today. We're going to see not only is He in every detail, but we serve a God of divine reversals. And what I mean by that is we have a God that can take the crappiest of situations and flip it over for His glory and for our good. And man, if I've learned anything in almost 47 years of life, I've seen the truth of this. I can look at something and go, it can't get any worse than this. This is the worst of my days. And God has this sovereign ability to take all of that and flip the script and turn it around, and you get to the other side and then go, I saw what you did right there, God. I saw what you did in that valley. I saw what you did in that death. I saw what you did through that addiction. I saw what you did in the crappiest of my days. God has a sovereign ability to take these things and flip it over on its head. And so today we're going to look at the story of Esther, as you saw in the video. And the story of Esther, the book of Esther, is only one of 2 books named after a woman in the Bible, but it's peculiar because the book of Esther is the only book of the Bible that does not mention the name of God. All right, so if you're reading through the Bible and you land on Esther, you're going to notice as you read through the chapters, you're not going to see His name. But what I want us to see today, paralleled with Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 14, is just because you don't see Him doesn't mean that He wasn't there. Right? Like I can look back over a chapter of my life, and I can just tell you, if it was a book, you wouldn't see God. Right? You wouldn't see God in this moment in my life when I was doing what the Bible would say, whoring myself out to the things of the world. When I was pursuing the things of the world, when I was chasing wild women and drugs and drink, when I was doing all the things of the world, you wouldn't see God, right? When I wasn't preaching sermons, when I wasn't teaching youth, and when I wasn't getting behind pulpits on Sunday, when I was living in complete rebellion, you wouldn't have seen God. But the reality is, it doesn't mean that He wasn't there. He was there the whole time. He was up in the heavenlies doing what only God could have done in those moments. And even though you wouldn't have saw Him, and even though I was shooting the finger at the Lord, He was up in the heavenlies going, I'm about to turn this whole story around, and ain't nobody going to see this thing coming. He was in all of it. He was in the good and the bad and the ugly. He was in the coming, and He was in the going. He was when I was living for myself and I was doing all these things. He was up in the heavenlies moving things around that I never saw coming. He was hearing the faithful prayers of my mama and my grandma on my behalf. He was putting key people in my life, and conversations were happening. I had no idea that He was wooing me, that He was drawing me. I go back to that bar in Northside, Fort Worth, Cowboy Cats or Filthy McNasties. I'm playing in a bar as a keyboard player, trying to make it to Nashville, and Melissa walks in as my bartender. Listen, God was there. He was moving things around. You mean to tell me that God was in a bar? He was. His sovereign hand was moving things around. And He was bringing Melissa into that bar right at the right time that I looked over and I said, that's the finest thing I ever laid my eyes on. You don't think God was there like, yeah, watch this. Watch this. He was in that truck when my truck spiraled out of control on March the 9th in a drunk driving accident. When I was living all for myself, He was there. He was in all of it. I didn't call out to the Lord after the drunk driving accident, and He shows up like a genie in a bottle and looks over at all my mess and goes, golly, Ryan, what did you do, man? You made a mess of everything. How are we ever going to pick all this stuff up? That's not the God we serve, and I think a lot of times that's the way we view Him, right? I'm going to rub on this genie bottle thing, and He's going to come out, and we're going to try to put together all the things that I messed up and broke. No, He was there the whole time. He was doing things the whole time, and we're going to see not only in my story, but we're going to see in the story of Esther that He was flipping the script, right? He was flipping the script. He was doing in the heavenlies what nobody saw coming. He's a God of divine reversals. And so here's the dilemma that I'm in. I've got to get to Esther chapter 7 this morning. To get to Esther chapter 7 on a timely Baptist manner, we're going to have to do a flyover of the first 6 chapters. All right? And so I say that to say this. Don't ever let me be your word, all right? So we're going to just kind of paraphrase some of the scriptures. Make sure you go home, take your Bible, and you read the story of Esther. Never let me be your word. Don't approach someone and go, well, Ryan said. No, we always need to be the word says, right? And so I've got to do a flyover for time's sake, but do not let this be your word. If you're looking for something to read this week, go read the story of Esther. It's an amazing, amazing story. But for time's sake, again, I've got to jump over the first 6 chapters as quickly as I can. And so with that being said, the story of Esther is going to take place during the Persian rule and reign. It's not going to be long after the same time that we were at last week in the story of Nehemiah. The people of God have been in captivity to the Persians, and they have been for a long time. Before that, it was the Babylonians. Now it's the Persians. And in the story of Esther, it's going to start off with one of the greatest kings that humanity has ever seen. You can take the Bible out of it and see that even in history, you'll see that King Xerxes was one of the greatest, wealthiest kings on this planet ever. In fact, he wasn't just like a little king that reigned over this little area. If you were to look at his rule and reign, King Xerxes' rule and reign on a globe, it would stretch from India to Ethiopia. It was 127 provinces. This dude was a huge king. In fact, the story of Esther is literally going to start with King Xerxes flexing his muscles. It's going to start off with him throwing the party of all parties. Right? Like when we think party, we think Larry Joe Taylor out in a pasture for a weekend, right? That's a pretty big party. But this is far bigger than that. In fact, the party that King Xerxes is about to throw is going to make Larry Joe Taylor look like a tea party on a Sunday morning. That this is a party of all parties. It ain't gonna go for a day. It ain't gonna go for a weekend. It ain't even gonna go for a week. It ain't even gonna go for a month. It's gonna go for 6 months. King Xerxes is going, you wanna see how big I am? I'm finna throw a party, and it's gonna be the biggest party you've ever been to. In fact, here's what I'm gonna do. For 6 months, all the drinks on me, all the food on me, from the least to the greatest, it says in the scriptures. I mean, he throws the party of all parties. You ain't gonna drink that nasty wine. You're gonna drink the finest wine in all the land for 6 months on me. This is how big King Xerxes was. And in this party, 7 days into this party, in this drunken binge party, he does the unthinkable, and he orders Queen Vashti to come and entertain him and his friends. And when I say come and entertain him and his friends, I ain't talking about she gonna show up and throw some juggling swords that are on fire. She gonna come and entertain him, if you know what I mean, or so he thinks. Jewish tradition would say that he wants Queen Vashti to show up with nothing but her crown on her head, if you know what I mean. And I love the scriptures because what we see, we can learn a lot from Queen Vashti, and we only see her for a little part of the story. But Queen Vashti is like, no, I'll come and juggle some swords on fire, but I ain't coming. I ain't your animal. I ain't your piece of meat. I ain't a zoo animal, and you ain't gonna treat me like that. I'll come to your party, but I'm gonna be fully clothed because that's where my bar is. I'm not an animal. Less trash, more class, we see in Vashti. And I want to just take my preacher hat off for a moment, and I want to speak from a dad's heart to the young girls that are in here. Young girls, listen to me. Again, dad's heart, not preacher. You ain't going to find this at seminary, all right? This is just from dad. And I hope that I've spoke this into my daughters, especially for the young girls who have found Mr. Right. If that's your story, you would land in that place. 2 scriptures I want to give you this morning. Psalm 139 and Ephesians 2:10. Psalm 139 talks about how we're fearfully and wonderfully made. That God don't make no junk. That when God is up in the heavenlies and you came to his mind, listen, he wasn't like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. No. It says in the scriptures, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. In fact, in Genesis chapter 1, when God's throwing Saturn, Pluto, and all the things, he's like, yeah, it's pretty good. Man, it's awesome. It's good, right? But in Psalm 139, when he created you, when he created us, he's going,